Welcome everyone to the final talking points of the 2022 Formula One season. My name's Tomo, his name's Aldas, his name's Hayden, his name's Matt. We are all here, all four of us, and I feel like a proper little presenter. I'm standing up, I've got my handheld microphone, I'm feeling good. Boys, Aldas, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. I mean, honestly, you give this guy like a handheld mic and it's like already the football jokes are coming out. He feels like he's commentating on the World Cup after this, actually. This is just part-time.
Has a couple of appearances on the F1, Any Driven Monday, and now Craig Slater needs to watch out for his job.
Straight to my head. Craig Slater, mate. Watch it, all right? I'm coming for you. Matt, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Just whatever you do, just don't give Tomo a script because you'll be there for a good few hours.
Don't give me a script.
We all know that. We've all known that.
Man can't handle that whatsoever.
I'm too real. Scripts are fake. Okay, I want to take it. But yes, Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 2022. We return to where it all ended last year. Ended in there was much to talk about last year, was it? It was a pretty boring race. And nothing happened at all. We'll get onto that. Talking points for this race. Who should we start with? Who I'm going to pick to kick off the talking points? Hayden Gullis.
You can start with me. Luckily, I am prepared. And I think the biggest talking
that's
point...
a first.
I'm shocked. The biggest talking point, I think, for the whole weekend is the sad one, and that is Sebastian Vettel's retirement.
Latifi going. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Latifi. yeah. Went out in style, did his own donuts halfway through the race, actually. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel retiring from the sport. A lot of people, Fem sat over there, very sad about it. And I think we all are. I think it's one of those where you kind of always hope the driver's going to come back in some way. Everyone's like, oh, Audi when they come back. Vettel's going to be back then. But with Vettel, it just feels like this is it. Like, he's gone. He'll be back in some capacity, like around the paddock at some point, maybe doing punditry every now and again. But I think, from a driver's perspective, he's done. And a good way to go out, points on your last race, or a point on your last race, and in Q3 as well. A great qualifying session, kind of messed up by the strategy. And I think he's just been brilliant towards the end of this season. And it is such a shame to see him go.
He's driven with a real freedom, I think, since that. I mean, he had a pretty poor start, that Australia spin early doors, and I was a bit concerned. But actually, no, he's been stellar, especially the second half of the season. Yeah, driven with a real freedom of a man who kind of knows that this is the end. He's enjoying it. Like Q3 quality to get there. Sorry, Lance, you were out in Q1. And no, that should have been, that had P behind Lando, whatever that would have been, written all over it. You know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I don't know. It's end of an era. It was sad, and it is still sad, but ultimately, he's doing it for reasons that are right for him, and he's bowing out on a high. I'm glad he didn't leave at the end of his Ferrari stint, because obviously that went bad. And I think leaving on a positive note, and he's laid good foundations there for Aston Martin with, the young rookie Fernando Alonso taking his seat for next year. What do you make of that one, Aldous?
Yeah, I mean, what a guy, letting young talent flourish. You can't say that.
So good of him.
Exactly. No, I think it's... The thing, when it was first announced, I don't think it kind of fully came into my head. I didn't get it fully wrapped up, but yeah, this weekend it was quite emotional, seeing all of the kind of the dedications to him from Red Bull, from Ferrari, which was really nice to see. I mean, it shows, let me say it this way, I don't think, when Fernando does retire, eventually, I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams with a massive dedication to him, because, but Seb always leaves with good relationships everywhere he goes, so yeah, that was really good to see. And actually, yeah, just performing well, I think, in 2020. I think Japan stands out to me as just a great race on a track that he obviously loves. And that's what, even though the car wasn't quite that, it wasn't really upper midfielder or even anywhere close to the podium, I think Seb as an individual, seeing him drive well, that makes me happy, because he's ending on a high in terms of his driving ability and his driving level. So yeah, that was really good to see. And I did see a few donuts as well, which was great as well. So yeah.
He also, after the race, also did an Instagram live, which I was not expecting whatsoever. Kind of talking about some of the decisions he's made and talking about a lot of the environmental stuff, and he's trying to urge, other drivers to do the same. I hadn't realised how much of an impact the environmental changes he's already implemented into his life in terms of his diet. Obviously, he's also not flying to every race with private jets or anything have you. So yeah, it's kind of weird just to sort of see that little notification pop up on my Instagram that he's now gone live. I'm like, oh, is it someone from his team? And it's just, nope, he's just there full on sweat just after a race, just wanting to do a little chat with everybody. So that was quite nice to see. But yeah,
his dad was also buzzing, by the way, as well. Love that.
Yeah, mate. Like him,
big up Norbert, man.
Yeah, like him doing, like him getting the full like Aston Martin clobber on. Also like dancing on like a back of like a lorry during the final lap he was doing on the race the night before. But yeah, it was great to see.
What did we make of the meal? All 20 of them turned up. And any, well, I was going to say any beef, maybe turkey, or it's near Christmas, isn't it, right?
Actually, has anyone actually ranks the food they've had there? There is a receipt somewhere, isn't there? Let me have a look.
I don't know if that was
grand.
I don't know if that was
possible?
their receipt. Was it? It was somebody who also went to that place before, so to kind of like compare
Dude, none
how
of you
much
know that. Oh my
the
God,
prices were. Wasn't it? It wasn't actually
was
their
me.
receipt.
Did you not
Yeah.
know this?
It was Aldas that posted it.
Yeah.
It was somebody else's receipt, wasn't it?
Yeah,
went
it
there
wasn't
before.
I was
Yeah.
joking. So basically,
Oh wow!
so Salt Bay, he has a steakhouse. I mean, Lewis Hamilton's not going to go to a steakhouse with all 20 drivers, is he? But yeah, Salt Bay
Brilliant.
posted a random receipt on the same day of basically, obviously, very wealthy people had like 150 grand receipt. So yeah, fair play.
Lewis Hamilton's not going to the steakhouse.
What's funny about that, right, is that first of all, it proves Aldas is just promoting fake news on Twitter, so take that as you want.
No, it's I've got the juice. I've got the juice. People will listen to
what's
me.
more funny about this is that earlier when me and Tomo were doing the Last Lap podcast, Tomo thought that was fact of being like, oh yeah, it was like 150 grand.
It was me.
Which
but
I
posted it as
only
a
just
joke.
learned it. I only just learned that recently that wasn't real either. So you got us both there.
But mate, Martin Brundle mentioned it in qualifying. He mentioned he was like, someone said it's like 150 grand, and I was like, I can't believe he just mentioned that.
You've baited everyone.
Brilliant.
Oh, honestly, mate, that tweet has done numbers. I think it's got like 90,000 likes. I was like,
Wow.
So yeah, no, it was me. It was a joke, by the way. But
Did you get any more
You
followers?
tricked the internet with. It's literally our second year of doing that now, isn't it?
Oh, that would have been a sick video. Yeah, you should have done.
I might have just
How many,
do it 'cause my people
how many
on YouTube
followers
might
did
know.
you gain from that, Aldas? Did you gain many?
Oh, probably like 20, mate. Not much.
Probably.
So
we'll cover that.
if you're a young F1 fan and you're wanting to start getting known out there, just start spreading fake news on Twitter and you'll grow your following.
10
To be
minutes
honest, it
after I
actually
posted that, I
works.
said it was a joke.
It actually works. I remember when everyone was doing those graphics of like the F1 breaking news. Steve used to do it all the time, Super GT, and he'd just say, "Yeah, everyone would get really annoyed, but it would gain me like 100+ followers every single tweet I did."
I remember he kept
Job
retweeting that
done.
stupid Bottas announcement every day.
And you can tell Aldas is clearly a fool for it because he's called it a stupid Bottas announcement.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, that's a man scorned right there. Cover that out. As you're the top shit, sir. What's your talking point?
I mean, listen, it's well.
It's
Should I do it about Fernando? It's got to be Fernando Alonso, isn't it?
Oh,
I think
of
all
course,
my
yeah.
talking points every single time have been something Alonso related. I mean, what a way for him to end, rightly so, with a reliability issue. I mean, talk about poetic, a poetic way to bow out from Alpine. 5 reliability-related DNFs, more than anyone else this season. And honestly, I wasn't even surprised when I saw it. Where things, I watched it with some friends that actually hate Fernando Alonso, so everyone was cheering. And let's just say the vibe was very different for me. I was just like, oh, for God's sake. But yeah, final race for Alpine. A decent car, terrible reliability, and he ends with a DNF, which is about right for Fernando Alonso, I think. So yeah, poetic.
Also, he can't wait to leave, can he? That's the... Was it him and Esteban doing a little chat, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to miss all the team," and Esteban's like, "No, you're not. You said you can't wait to leave," and he was like, "Yeah, you're right. I can't
Fair
wait."
play to
That's
Esteban, by the way, for like, what is it, giving some
See you
back.
later.
Exactly.
I think I'm just really interested to see how that goes at Aston Martin, because I think they've had a really good end of season trajectory. Like, I think the fact that they almost level on points with Alfa Romeo, like I think it shows from where they were at the start of the season. I don't think it's going to be as bad as a car as we would have looked at. When that was announced, the Aston Martin was still right down there with Williams. Now it's arguably, I know it changes very quickly, right? But it's a very different conversation, him going to Aston Martin compared to earlier on in the year. A lot can change in 6 months,
I've told you, boys, just give it time. Just give it time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to happen. Once those facilities are up and running, Aston Martin are going to be challenging
Tomo's
the
got
front.
a whole video all about that. So
I do. I do.
If only they had two quality drivers next year, but what can you do?
Well, don't be so mean on Fernando. He's getting on a bit.
Yeah,
He's still got it, I think. So,
yeah, that's a proper Uno reverse card on yourself there.
I knew it was coming. To be fair, Stroll actually had a half decent race. I mean, he got a bit lucky, but it's all good.
He just has a shocking qualifying, and then he comes back. Although Aston Martin
turns up once every 5-7
they should have
races.
jumped Alfa Romeo. If they didn't muck up Seb's strategy, I think it could have been ahead of Ocon and then Stroll behind Ocon, which would have been enough points to get Alfa Romeo in the championship. But going back to the Alonso point on your one, I love how you also, going back to your tweets too, you called it perfectly of Fernando's car not making. There was a graphic of the three cars doing donuts way back when Alonso first retired. And somebody changed it so it was like the Alpine, but it was on fire. And Aldous was like, that car's not even making it to the end. And it didn't. It didn't.
I knew it.
Lewis didn't make it either, so
6K
Seb
likes.
was sadly on his own.
Yeah.
Bless. And also Mick got told off for doing donuts, didn't he?
That was
I saw the onboard on that.
No, Mick, stop. I'm sorry, stop.
I mean, like...
Mick's just like, fuck you, I'm doing it. Woo!
Yeah, that was kind of my thought behind it. Like, surely he would have been like, what are you going to do? Fire me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not going to be in the team next year.
Wow.
Wait till Ralph hears about this.
Wait till... I'm going to tell Ralph on you.
Wait till my uncle hears about this. Honestly, by the way, Ralph Schumacher was going nuts. The stuff that comes out of that guy's mouth is crazy.
Yeah, he's like Helmut Marko 2.0. He just always quotes. There's just so many quotes from him. Fair. End of a standard Fernando Alonso season. Standard Fernando Alonso bad luck. Go on then,
fire.
Matt. Matt, talking point. Talk to us about a point.
Let's go back into the race that happened. Let's talk about Lewis Hamilton flying without any wings, going over that curb. Did it ever come out that he did actually have floor damage in the end? Because I know he was complaining a lot earlier in the race that he didn't have, the car wasn't that well, it wasn't shifting as much. But then ultimately later on, I think that was then what caused the return of him.
He seemed to think in the post-race chat that he had floor damage, yes. Yeah,
but it seemed like he just properly launched going off in the same chicane that he had a bit of a misstep in last year as well. But yeah, I looking on the onboard for that, I do kind of feel like Sainz did give enough space. I mean, it was a bit of a dive. Was it? Sorry. Was it Sainz? Was it?
Sainz.
It was Sainz. Yeah, sorry. I'm double checking because I know there's people in the comments who are like, "Oh, you didn't watch it."
Let them have it. Give us the engagement. Come on, boys. Come at us.
Go for it.
All your Matt roasts. All your Matt roasts.
Get him off the podcast. But yeah, I felt like he gave enough space. But then sort of, for me, it kind of felt like Hamilton chose to go off, which he's entitled to do, but then didn't probably realise how big of a curb that was going to launch him off from it. But I don't know. I thought that was a fair move from Sainz there. Didn't physically push him or anything. There wasn't any contact, and there was enough space, I felt like, on the track. What do you guys think of it? Addis, what did you think?
I thought it was a fair move. I thought it was a good dive, opportunistic on obviously lap 1. I didn't think there was any problem. Obviously, the new racing rules is that once your wheels ahead, once your axle is ahead of the other car or your wings ahead of the other car, it's your corner. And he did a good lunge. Obviously, Sainz kept it on the track. He didn't lunge off the track. So yeah, it was a good move. And ultimately, Lewis decided to bail early, which I also don't actually. Yeah, like you said, I don't think he realised that curb was there. And so I don't blame Lewis for bailing early because that corner's a bit tricky to kind of try and steer it once where Lewis was where he was. So yeah, and in the end, it was kind of like the right choice. The FIA didn't make a big deal about it. It was just, can you swap the positions? And they did. So I think it was kind of right from both sides. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the team. I don't think the FIA actually communicated with the team. I think the team saw that it was under investigation, just thought, just in case, let's not get a penalty and put us even further back. Let's just get this done and get it back. It's touch and go with that stuff. I hate it. I complain all the time. I was on the podcast last week, but I would have had a field day ranting about the Verstappen-Hamilton crash because it just annoys me how it was Max's fault.
Who did you think was at fault, by the way, in Brazil?
It was 100% Max's fault under the rules that we currently have. And I do not agree with the rules that we currently have. They're the most stupid rules in terms of overtaking. They kill overtaking and they kill racing because Sainz can go up the inside. Lewis needs to learn how to close the door for one, but Sainz can go up the inside and just leave Hamilton not a lot of room. If Hamilton stuck it on the inside, same thing would have happened. That hairpin chicane part is horrible to go side by side. We saw it with Hulkenberg, where he and Grosjean went side by side, and then obviously the pincering and Hulkenberg's car got rolled. It's just, you can't really get two cars into one unless both drivers are giving lots of room through the first and the second part of the apex. But for me, it just kills wheel-to-wheel racing, because you can just turn in. If you're in front, the other guy isn't entitled to shit. You can put them into the wall for all they like. It's their fault. And that's what I hate about these rules. And that's why it's always going to be the person that's behind, as long as, like, there's better ways to do it. If it's like 50 meters before the apex of the corner, if the guy who is behind, his front wheels are, alongside the rear wheels of the guy ahead, then they're entitled to room. And then as fans, we will get proper wheel-to-wheel racing. I want to see these drivers outsmarting each other, doing switchbacks, stuff like that, going wheel-to-wheel through corners. I want to see their skill properly shown, instead of just like, my wheels are here first. Off the track you go. You got to bail out of that one or get a penalty.
It's so hard to actually really police it then. Because then like, the question would be, well, what would be the rules for overtaking? But there's so many different variables of like, okay, well, when you start going into the braking zone, okay, but what is that? Is that 50 meters? Is that 100 meters?
This is why, like, they're trying to kind of write everything down. I just think they need consistent stewards who are racing people who understand it. And they're the same stewards all the time, because then the drivers know, okay, like this panel of stewards, they're going to be maybe a bit more strict or a bit more lenient. And then as long as everyone's playing by the same rules, trying to kind of mathematically kind of write it all, I don't know. It doesn't, like you say, Hayden, it just doesn't work, I don't think.
After 2021, Racing Room, there is so much ambiguity about what Racing Room actually is. And so now they've what the FIA have done now is they've almost tried to make like a black and white rule in terms of like an actual geometric, like something that you can calculate in terms of, are you alongside, in terms of, is your front wing or is your wheel actually next to the car? If it's even a tiny part behind, you don't deserve Racing Room. Now, how, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really like that, because I think that doesn't mean that there's going to be side by side action for a lot of the time. Because you can literally just, once again, if you're even an inch ahead of the other car, basically that what the FIA have said is that...
Did you get like a ruler, just put it on the screen, like VAR, like...
VAR, that's what we need!
Yeah.
So bring out the VAR.
Bring it out. Also, I feel so sorry for, Lewis isn't one of the youngest drivers on the grid, and his spine has taken an absolute pummeling this year. He's had this, he had Spa, and he had the porpoising at Baku. I mean, I'm surprised he managed to... Well, basically, he was saying afterwards that the damage meant that the car became very front heavy, and then when he pitted
forward,
yeah, exactly, and then they dialed a bit of wing out, and that's why he was quicker when he came back out, and then eventually the car failed. So it was kind of I think they won't be sad to see the back of the W13. I don't think.
I was about to say, that is definitely one they're not wanting to put into get it into a museum, just get it away from the Mercedes factory from Brackley, just get it out of there, just because. Yeah, there's no.
It's going to be one of those barn door finds that you see when you're just around the UK one day. It's like, oh my god, what is this? Just
it's some worthless piece of thing. But Tommy, what's your talking point, mate?
Yeah, what's my talking point? You know what? My talking point is Logan Sargent. Williams driver confirmed.
Biggest fan over here.
Come on. Well, no, look, now he's in F1. Like, honestly, I think I just wanted an American driver to get to F1, to be honest. I think that's why I was rooting for Logan so much throughout the season, because I wanted to see an American driver get to F1. He's got there, so well done. Tick. Box ticks. But yeah, you know what? Like, if you were watching F2 this weekend, got P6 in qualifying. I think all things considered did a pretty good job. Obviously, everything to lose. Everyone else, every other driver in F2 had nothing to lose. He had everything to lose. So you could see, he was didn't have a great start in the sprint, got a few points in the race, stuck behind Roy Nissany, who's not the most, predictable of drivers at times. Got the move done in the end, and even then, Nissany got a little bit of a, kick out on the rear end, and I was a bit scared. But, Doohan had his issues, Porsche had his issues, Sargent brought it home P5. P4 in the end in the Drivers' Championship, which, he lost a place to Lawson. He's not going to care. He's into Formula One. And, I thought it was a mature weekend, given all of the pressure surrounding it. Did any of you boys watch it?
I watched the end of it, but if he hadn't have got his super license points, who would you have thought would have been the actual replacement?
Schumacher.
Yeah, Schumacher, definitely.
Yeah.
Because Jost Capito's talked quite positively about Mick Schumacher, how he deserves to be in F1. I don't think he would say things like that if Mick wasn't lined up as a potential. But I mean, that was always unlikely. So.
I did actually think when, because obviously Iwasa won the feature race, and I thought to myself, obviously Iwasa might have won the race, but the real winner is Logan Sargent. I mean, he should have celebrated that like a championship, because well, it's quite an interesting situation, to be fair. I don't know if we have ever even been in this kind of situation where someone literally has a Formula One drive on the line in the final race. Like, to me, that's even bigger than a Formula 2 title in any sense.
I did find that really funny when literally at the end of the race, as soon as he crosses the line, Alex Yates goes, "There goes Logan Sargent, Formula One driver." I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good. That
it's good. No, he did a very good job. I think especially again given, I mean, we saw Felipe Drogovic attacking Iwasa at the end and driving with like. It's the final race of the season. Everyone who's got their opportunities has kind of got their opportunities. So you can drive a bit of freedom, but again, he's got this kind of carrot being dangled. And especially with, again, with doing his issues, like he probably would have been all right in the end. And Fittipaldi had an incident in sprint. But yeah, I was happy for him. And it'd be interesting to see if how well he stacks up against Alex Albon next year. Because, again, Latifi hasn't given him much pressure, so I'm looking forward to seeing Alex hopefully being put under a bit more pressure next year.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic. I really hope that team then gets comfortable as a midfield team, because at the moment they're still towards the back, and it's just partly just due to the second driver not performing that well. But yeah, I just hope Logan takes it so like a duck to water so well in this one. But yeah.
Well, I mean, Albon was P13 or something like that in the race, wasn't he? Like, he was having a decent race. He was up there just on the edge of the points. Yeah, P13 in the race. And I think he was just behind Zhou as well. Zhou got him on the end because he was on the soft tyres.
Yeah, he wasn't much behind Zhou.
So, yeah, it'd be good to see. Well, how are you going to cope? That's what I want to know. How are you going to cope next season? You got Logan Sargent, Albon. What if they are closely racing against each other? Who are you going to support? What's going to happen to you?
Albon, obviously.
I think I asked him this question a few episodes ago, actually.
You've been banging that drum for Logan Sargent for so long, like.
Yeah, but his left two, like, amongst the F2 lot,
get lost. Yeah,
I still like him.
You're in the bin.
It's like if Ocon and Albon race wheel to wheel, I still want Albon to come out better, but I still love Esty Bestie, It's all good. It's all good. I ain't got all my eggs in one basket, but the biggest basket is, of course, that of Alexander Albon. No, exactly, just like you. All right then, Hayden. Another talking point. What else do you want to chat about, mate?
Williams to the other. It's Latifi and Mick Schumacher's coming together in the weirdest crash I've ever seen. Mick up the inside, the smallest touch, and both of them do the perfect pirouette. I will take back everything I've said about the F122 game and it being unrealistic, because I have done that so many times and be like, how has my car spun? I've made the contact, but I've seen it there, clear as day. It's realistic. And I honestly still don't know the physics behind that or how that happened, because that was insane.
Oh dear. I when I first watched it, I was so confused because I still am a bit undecided because obviously like Mick got the penalty for it. But when you see the onboard, I understand why Mick went for the move, because Latifi looked like he outbraked himself and was basically just doing or either outbroke himself or was just doing a very wide entry point into the corner. So go out wide and have a tight, faster line going out, which is like, you'd only do that if someone was having a send on you, which he wasn't. So as that gap opened up, I could see why Mick sort of got his nose in there to try to have a little. But then they just sort of come together like a bit of a. It was just really clunky from both of them, really. It was just a bit silly.
Welcome to F1 rules of overtaking. Mick Schumacher saw the gap, he went for it, but it doesn't matter. He's the guy behind,
He was ahead. Nick was ahead in the corner.
Do whatever the fuck he wants. He could put him in the wall. He could spin his car around. It doesn't matter. You're the car behind. You are entitled to fuck all.
Can I just say though, the replay, the slow motion of both of them spinning, it was like poetry in motion. It was absolutely perfect. But yeah, I mean, it was a bit clumsy by Mick in terms of like that gap was always going to close. He was always behind. But again, watching Mick's onboard, like. There is a chance for him to like bail and back out of it, but it seems like he just lets go of the brakes for some reason or something like that. Like there is a very clear chance of him just back out and like, maybe brake and lock up a little bit, but not hit him. But yeah, he just rear ends straight into the back of Latifi, and yeah, that pirouette was just synchronized pirouette was beautiful. I think
clumsy's the perfect word for that one. I think it's just but I mean, neither of them are going to be in F1 next year, so.
It was kind of funny that as soon as we see yellow flag and then we see Latifi in the barrier, we're like, oh no, what did he do again? It's like,
well, it was those two fighting last season that caused the safety car. So I honestly thought it happened again.
It's so true. It's what do we think about just quickly as well? What do we think about Mick's chances of getting back in 2024?
Quite high. I think quite high because I've compared his season very much the same as Zhou, and I've rated Zhou's season. And it's the same thing. You know, Bottas was wiping the floor with Zhou at the start of the season. Zhou was getting used up to speed with the car. And then it's kind of roles reversed at the end of the season. But unfortunately, that Alfa Romeo was nowhere near where it was at the start. And it's the same with the Haas. Mick Schumacher's had the better performances. Yeah, okay, Magnussen's had more of the standout moments. He obviously got the pole in Brazil. It was a great day for him there. And obviously, at the start of the season, getting that P5 for Haas. But at the end of the season, Mick's definitely been the guy on top in the majority of qualifying and races, but just hasn't had the car to be able to fight the points. When Mick has a good day now, it's P11, P12 is the best he can hope for. So I rate quite highly.
That Zhou comparison is actually really good because even if you want to get rid of Mick's actual rookie season and say, 2022 was his rookie season, the really big difference, I don't remember Zhou having any big crashes. Like, he had maybe one scrape with Gasly, I think, in the sprint race in Imola. Other than that, Zhou has kept it clean.
He almost did at Monaco, but he saved it.
It's true, exactly. But, those were... When was the last one? Monaco, maybe Japan was, I suppose, in free practice. But
Japan, Monaco, Saudi Arabia, yeah.
Japan was actually... But Japan was an annoying one for the team. That was after the end of FP1. It wasn't even in a racing situation. So it's just little things like that. But in terms of... I do think Mick, I want to see him in a different team. I don't think Haas was the right environment. I don't think that team is right for a young driver, especially two young drivers. I mean, we saw exactly how that turned out last year. But I think the difficult thing for Mick actually is that if there is a team, hypothetically, in 2024 that is open to bringing back a driver and maybe taking a chance on someone that's out of Formula One, even someone like Ricciardo is still a Grand Prix winner if Ricciardo wants to come back. And if there's if I was open to having a driver that's outside of the sport at the moment, I'd still probably take a punt on Ricciardo if he wants to come back over Mick Schumacher. So he's not only got to go up against other Formula One drivers, other drivers in F2 that are also going to try to want to get on the grid, but even drivers like Ricciardo who are out of the sport and looking to maybe get back in. So,
and I think that's where it's more on what the teams are looking for. That's why, that's why Nico Hülkenberg's come back, because the team need that stability. They need that experience rather than someone who could be, their next star driver. They just need, we just need to develop the car now to stop being at the back and actually move the car forward. Because with Latifi, he's so far off from Alex's pace. It means any feedback he has with the car to make him drive a bit better, ultimately he's not going to actually add to the development of that car. So I think it's a really hard situation. I personally don't think I can see Mick Schumacher coming back and I don't think it's his fault either. Really, it's as you said. I don't think Haas. Well, yeah, but also I agree that Haas wasn't the right situation, right team for him to go into. But obviously, it was only because of the Ferrari Academy partnership he had, and that was the progression to go up to it. So he's kind of been dealt a bad hand, but I don't think he will ever be able to get out of that situation now of team is without any good driver, who are they going to bring in? Mick Schumacher. I can't see that, unfortunately.
I think his best chance personally is Williams and Albon not staying at the end of next year and getting a move somewhere else.
Where would you see Albon
Sergeant having a shocker? Replace Max at Red Bull. Why not?
Actually, wait, really quickly though.
He's had his chance.
I do want to ask Matt, because we all know that Matt is a world-class Hülkenberg hater. How do you feel about him coming back to the grid?
You killed him. You killed him live. Watch Matt die slowly.
I'm loving this. This is brilliant.
He can't handle the facts.
Oh God. I'm not a Hülkenberg hater. Oh no! I promise.
The voice just went, just like
because I didn't expect you to say that whilst I was drinking, so I just choked on it. No, I'm not a Hülkenberg hater. I just if you look at it's just more. As I was saying before, it's what the team is after. That's the main thing. And Haas, we all agree that when they had two rookies in, that was the wrong decision. What they should have done is what they did this season with K-Mag staying on and then having Mick there, so then they could get some stability back into it. They haven't done that because of their own choices, so therefore they just do need that stability in now. And looking at the roster out there, Nick de Vries was waiting to get into the sport. He's now obviously got that with AlphaTauri. And who else is really left? You haven't got anyone experienced like that, apart from what's his name from Alfa Romeo?
Daniel Ricciardo. He's sort of us. He's quite experienced, isn't he?
Teo Porcher.
Yeah. Yeah, like Giovinazzi, where like it's...
Well, they gave him a chance. He put it in the wall, and they were like, "Yeah, maybe not this guy."
Exactly that. Yeah, you got those sort of issues there.
So sad.
And then it's just
That was
like
brilliant.
Like, kind of, who else is left then who can do a reliable job? And yeah, so I
reckon I could.
I'm not Ted Kravitz. I don't hate Nico Hulkenberg. I just think he's had his day, basically. But if that's what they're needing in terms of the team to have more stability, then go for it.
Yeah, there's not a wealth of experience, but there's a wealth of young talent coming through, I think, as well.
I'd love to prove me wrong. Totally. So
do it. Right, come on then, Aldas. Talk to us about a point.
I mean, it's got to be the bit. Last season, we had 2 drivers go into the final race for the big prize, level on points, all of the drama. We had something very similar in 2022, but maybe not quite for the biggest prize, but the battle for P2 and ultimately Leclerc coming out on top. I mean, it was a battle between the 2-stop and the 1-stop. I think, honestly, it's going to look a lot better with Leclerc in P2 because if he finished behind Perez, I think it would just made Ferrari look even worse. And they're already on like thin ice after the season, but yeah, to fumble after the beginning of the season that they had. Keep in mind that Perez is nowhere near Verstappen. Verstappen's in like a different formula to Ferrari this season, but yeah, Leclerc coming out on top for P2, and I think it was a good save because it would have looked a hell of a lot worse for Ferrari. So yeah, tiny little.
Weren't you saying, Matt, as well? Big payday for Charles finishing P2.
Well, listen, so I believe after the big dinner they all had, Lando was having.
How much was the dinner, Matt?
Your guess is as good as mine. You got the inside knowledge there.
I got the receipts, mate.
Yeah, because you were their waiter. So Lando was having an interview with Sky Sports, and George Russell joined them. They were talking about the dinner, and George mentioned that at the dinner, Charles basically let it loose at like if he got second in the drivers, then he gets a big old bonus. So he's like, please make it all my worthwhile. So and that for me, I was then after I heard that, I was like, oh, you know what, I am gonna gun for Leclerc because like I do think he deserves a P2 anyway.
Get that bag.
You're like, yeah, you do.
No, you know what? I think over the course of the season, given his performances, and yeah, he's let himself down a couple of times, but typically it's mainly been out of his control. And yeah, I think he's done enough to earn and merit P2 in the championship for sure.
Yeah,
honestly, the most boring battle though during that race. There was a lot of stuff going on. Vettel versus Ricciardo versus Tsunoda at one point. I could see on the timing screens, and instead we're just watching. Now Sergio Perez is 4.9 seconds off. Oh, now he's 4.7.
There was loads of overtakes in this race. It's just
and we didn't see him because we were just
they
watching
weren't at the front.
Stupid battle. It wasn't even a battle. It was just like watching time trial. No one cares. Show me the actual action. They hyped up this great battle because obviously we had a last season both on the same point. So like we could do this again. It worked so well last year. And
they
obviously
made, like,
no one
a similar
cared.
graphic as well. Like
I'll message to the T feed to make everyone stop for a minute.
Well, it almost happened. You know, he did his spin. It could have got a safety car and maybe could have been the same ending. But yeah, it was just sort of frustrating. But going onto the Ferrari point, obviously Matteo Binotto's been rumoured, hasn't he, that he's going to be replaced. What do we think? Obviously, I think you talked about it last time, but what do we think? Is he actually going to be replaced? Because I'm on the point of no, because Rome wasn't built in a day. And I think what he has done in that team is taken from a backmarker of Ferrari to now fighting for race wins again.
Backmarker.
Look at them back in 2020. They were struggling big time.
That's because they got caught cheating. And
they were still struggling big time.
They had to change their engine. And they're like, we can't build a car out this then.
They were at the back, and he's put them to a front runner. All right, just give it time.
Backmarker.
It was close enough.
It was like Haas 2021, just tooling around on their own 30 seconds off the pace.
Were you watching that race in Mugello? They were a backmarker. Monza down the straight. Bye-bye, everyone.
Mugello was an L. That was so embarrassing. That was like their big Grand Prix as well, wasn't it? Their big like anniversary. Oh god,
they were a backmarker.
I think Alda said it great last time. I'll let you basically share your thoughts because I do. The more I heard it back, I do fully agree what Aldous' one was. So what did you mention before, mate?
basically, I made the point that I'd give Binotto one more season in terms of, again, they weren't a backmarker in 2020, but from where he started, from kind of the low point, again, obviously 2019, illegal engine tax, whatever, we can kind of skip over that. But from where the team was in 2020 and 2021, he has took this team back to winning races, and that's more than Alpine have done. That's more than anyone at McLaren has done. And so I do think that kind of, he's earned a bit of time, but only a little bit, nothing more than a year. There's got to be progress. I'm not saying that next year they've got to win the championship, but they've got to still have a winning car. There's no way they can regress. They still have to win races and prove that they can actually Matteo Binotto has to prove that the team has learned from all of these little strategical errors, the shocking pit stops, some of the driver errors as well. He needs to lead the team a little bit better there. So I feel like based off the fact that he has brought Ferrari back to winning races, and maybe it was just a little bit too soon for us to expect that they were going to challenge for the title against Red Bull, who are a team that were made, to winning world championships. Max Verstappen was just waiting for the car. So that's why I said I'd give Binotto one more season, because I feel like he's earned it, and that is it. If he doesn't deliver at least an improvement in terms of form, both the drivers, operationally, then he's out.
So I do agree with that, because I do think, like, as well, the mistakes that have happened within the team this year, particularly with strategy, or even just the fumbling around of like the team not getting tyres ready and whatnot, you can't just pin that on like the captain of the ship. Because obviously he doesn't have a direct communication into that. He's very much hired the people who he thinks are the best people for the job to facilitate that role. So I do agree.
Is that not a symptom though?
But this is the thing.
A broader failing.
But that's where I think it was Hungary or whatever it might have been, where the strategy was just so obviously incorrect, and then afterwards he did admit any fault to that. That for me was very telling of like, okay, he's clearly not identified what the problem is, or he doesn't even want to address it, whether that's to make Ferrari look better in the press or what.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to address it. That he was.
What you say publicly versus
yeah, and so then, but like that's where for me. Yeah, I agree. He needs to have one more year, and that will be next year will be very telling of that. But in terms of action, I do think they do need to change up who's in their strategy team, because it's always a running joke with Ferrari, and I think they've had stability there where it's been the same people who've been doing it for donkey's years, and for some reason the last 2 to 3 years it's just not been working at all. The fact that we can all tell at home that the strategy is incorrect, where we haven't even seen that much data. It's such an obvious thing and that's a quick fix that can be done. Just simply hiring someone who's different or has been training behind or anything, give them the confidence to go and follow that team leadership, being like, okay, I'm gonna make this decision. You're not working to the best of your ability. Gonna move to someone else, unfortunately, because you've had the opportunity, it's not worked, and that's where Ferrari have really failed on this season. It's very much been down to the team.
I still think that's John Binotto, by the way. Like the strategy stuff he's the guy on the pit wall.
Yeah, because I mean, strategy is more than just, yes, obviously you have the strategists, but then it's how do they communicate with the race engineers? How do they communicate with the drivers? How do they all kind of work together? I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think Matteo Binotto is 100% will be part of Ferrari's success if and when it comes. But I just think he's a technical man. His expertise, when he was Rubens Barrichello's race engineer or working on the engine side with Michael Schumacher back in those days, like he clearly knows his shit. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing from a technical point of view. I'm just not convinced that he's that, leader. Outwardly facing, leader, someone that the team. I'm not convinced he's a Toto Wolff, a Christian Horner, that kind of character that I think will bring out the best in Ferrari. Like I think Arriva Bene was, as much as there were failings during his time at Ferrari, I don't know. I just feel like he was the kind of character that maybe. I think Ferrari were maybe stronger on that side, but then weaker on the more technical side back then. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's kind of gone swapped around. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I just feel like as it is right now, this current system, I think Binotto should be moved over and focusing on a more technical role, and then bring someone else in to kind of rally the troops and making sure that pit stops are on point.
That's what you're needing. You're needing a proper team leader.
I don't get that from Binotto. Yeah. And maybe it's just because, I don't know, because the image he portrays, he doesn't portray this strong, and maybe that's just a preconceived idea in my head of what I think one of these, big, like a Toto Wolff character is.
Yeah.
But there's not one way of success. I mean, Jean Todt and Ross Brawn weren't like that necessarily, but I don't know. I just don't see it in Binotto.
But that's the thing, I don't see, like Christian Horner or Toto Wolff doing those like sort of in-depth meetings about race strategy or anything. They'll just see it from the outset and be like, right, something's not working there, what do we need to change, and trust in the team to do that stuff, rather than being, I think the only reason with Binotto is because he's coming up through developing the engines and stuff before. But Hayden, what do you think on it, mate? Do you
well,
think
I think next year is such a big year for them, especially with the implications that Red Bull have been put on them of the, taking away their time in the aero and also the development. So if Ferrari are not, I don't want to say they have to beat Red Bull because of that massive drop down, but it has to be, right down to the wire at the end of the year. They have to make a massive step up compared to Red Bull. And if they don't do that, then something has definitely gone wrong. But they've gone from a back marker in 2020 to a front run in 2022. So I'm sure they're going to be dominated by about 2 seconds next year.
That's it.
Brilliant.
Worst car on the grid. Right. Matt, come on then. Final talking point from you, mate.
Obviously, it's got to be about my boy, who
Is it true he was crying? By the way, I didn't see that.
So I did look on his onboard. I don't think so.
I saw the clip. He's like when he's pulled up and he's.
Oh, is it when he's pulled up? Is it? Oh, okay. I saw after checking flag to him doing the donuts. And then
you're telling me you haven't watched his whole on board from start jumping in the car to when he jumped out of the car?
Do you remember Monza? He was like ready when me and Tomo said, yeah, we think Lando's been the better driver, and Matt was watching the inside side.
I have receipts.
I've got the
data. I was with Tomo. I was doing the last lap. I couldn't have time to do all that stuff. But yeah, no, so obviously Helmut Marko accidentally slipped that Ricciardo is going to be signing up as the Red Bull test
accidentally slipped
reserve driver. Whoops. Yeah. And then the fact, I love that like Christian Horner had to then basically admit that in a team in the press conference, saying like, oh, he enthusiastically said before anyone signed. So yeah, it's a great shame that he's what's happening with in terms of like going from Red Bull to Renault to McLaren and then going back to Red Bull. Big egg on all of our faces with that. I'd be interested to hear in terms like his and mine, like us together.
Speak for yourself, mate. I
am very much so. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts of where you think. After 2023, what do you think is going to happen with Ricciardo? Because obviously, you know my stance on it. I think he will get a seat potentially back with like AlphaTauri after that season, because it will still technically be within the Red Bull family. I know there's talks about Porsche or whomever might be like trying to buy out the team, but that won't be for a few years into the future. I even saw one long old thread on Twitter that basically he's been brought back into Red Bull to replace Perez because of all the crash gates.
I believe it. I'm slamming that call. I think so. You saw them in the call. If you watch the cool down room, they're still so frosty with each other. It was so awkward. And then Charles was sat over to the side and he was the one communicating with each driver because they just didn't want to talk to each other. And I don't think it's going to go away. Max is unhappy for whatever's happened. I've heard so many rumours about what's gone on. One was that Kelly was flirting with Perez in Monaco. That's one that I've heard. Another one is obviously, we all know about the Monaco crash on purpose. In Mexico, Perez apparently asked to win the race and Max was like, no, the fastest driver wins the race. That's not happening. Which I understand that one. You can't really ask for a race win. Like, it doesn't necessarily work.
Depends if it's cheeky or not, I guess.
Can you bin it so I get poled?
Yeah, but like, so I think that there is something in that team now where it's completely done. Like, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get back on a working maybe a working relationship term might work. They can just be civil with each other. But in terms of like how they were before,
relationship basically.
Yeah, it might work like that, but I think it could just be a ticking time bomb, and that's why I think Ricciardo's back in that seat because for 2024, I 100% think that's going to break down. And who are they going to put in their place? Do you see Tsunoda go in there? Do you see Nick de Vries go in there? I don't see either of them. I see
Lando go in there.
I see. Potentially they could bring someone else in, but I think, Daniel Ricciardo working with the team and getting used to that car that they're developing for 2024.
Yeah, but isn't he only going to be hired to do like donuts in the 2012 car? That's all he's doing because they've already got like someone like Liam Lawson who's their actual third and reserve driver. Apparently, Ricciardo is just going to be there to like sign some posters and do donuts.
Well, potentially he could just be doing that. But if you have somebody who could just be doing the stuff in the simulator, working on the car for next year in the background, and somebody who has all that information ready to jump in if something does happen and neither of those two drivers want to work with each other, and obviously if Perez go it's him or me, they'd be like, all right, there's the door, mate. See you later. And they've got someone ready to step in. So
who's already great mates with great
exactly
friends with Max as well.
And he knows the whole team very well. Like, obviously, I think they left on kind of sour note. Like, it wasn't a sour note, but it was kind of like maybe felt hard done by of going to Renault over them. But you know, I still think there's a good relationship there with everybody in the team, and I think with Max as well. The only problem is the reason why he left was because of Max being more favoured as the number one driver. Would that be something he'd be happy to go into that second driver role?
I think that's where he would just have to. Yeah, I think he would just have to like swallow his pride and be like, look, okay, I have to accept I'm being a number two driver here, but then I'm also in a car which I'm going to be on the podium once again. If that was the case, it's like
it's also a car that you can fight for the championship, and every F1 driver believes that they are the best F1 driver on the grid. So I think Daniel still has that mentality.
Can you just imagine though, 2024, if he did get that seat, and then he did win the championship?
No.
What a storyline!
No, I can't. Let's not. Let's save this time, man.
What's your predictions for 2024 with Ricciardo?
I do. First of all, quickly on the Perez thing, I think Hayden's bang on. That relationship, Sao Paulo was the first crack we've ever seen in that relationship, and it's only going to get worse because Max doesn't.
That was public facing, yeah.
Yeah, and Max doesn't seem to me like the type of character to actually heal a relationship. When he's in the car, when the adrenaline's running, he pops off so easy, and there's gonna be another moment. Especially, the thing is, it's easy now when the car's dominant and he's had this, incredible season. He's beat everyone by 200-300 points. But if it does get closer in 2023, and he will need Perez's help, I don't know how that's gonna go. I think that relationship, I don't think it's gonna go completely sour like it did with Vettel and Webber. But that Sao Paulo was the first crack, and to me, it's only gonna get worse because Checo's not gonna feel valued there. So yeah, I definitely agree with Hayden on that one. The thing about this Ricciardo thing to Red Bull, I absolutely hate it. I mean, it's just such a bad... In terms of for next year, him as like this third driver or whatever, I absolutely hate it. That is the least...
Well, no, he will be the new test and reserve driver.
That's not an environment where I think...
Replacing Liam.
Ricciardo needs to prove to himself mentally that he actually is motivated to come back into Formula One. He needs to regain some confidence, regain some self-esteem after these last 2 years. And going to Red Bulls, to me, is the wrong choice. But I would actually like to see him back at Red Bull. I think it'd be really fun. So... yeah, it's kind of I don't know.
No more fancy helmet designs, unfortunately.
He's essentially he's burnt out. There's no doubt in my mind. He's burnt out. This is essentially
mentally, especially
a way of him taking a year out essentially and still keeping his foot somewhat in the door. Like I say, doing odds, marketing things, whatever, and just getting his head out of the game for a bit because he's never missed a race since he started in Formula One. And I think ultimately, if that's the best choice for him, like him going to another team and not giving himself that mental reset, I think arguably, only he can make that call. And I think other drivers would have stayed and pushed through it. And that's clearly not what he wants to do. And fair enough, because we know there's a good driver there. And we know that these car characteristics, right? Because we know Daniel Ricciardo can drive a Red Bull very quickly. He can drive a Renault very quickly. We've seen in those instances. And we saw, like, Lando was literally talking earlier today about how, like, there's McLaren characteristics that he doesn't like in that car that have been there since he joined the team. Like, that's like going back to 2020, sorry, when it was his first season. It's like there's characteristics that stay, like, even though the regulations have changed. And it's like, I guess the things stopping Daniel, because if you get a top tier Daniel, like we got, like Renault had in 2020, is arguably best to the rest up there with Checo both outperforming, like doing bits in midfield machinery. But there's obviously that risk that that he can't drive anything quick like an Alonso can, for example, right? That as much as it was a risk bringing Alonso back because of his age, you knew that every single car he's driven, whether it's been a top car or a bottom car or a midfield car, whatever, he's always been able to extract the maximum from that. Yeah, a proper back marker, exactly.
Like Ferrari in 2020, yeah. I agree. We're on the same page. We're all speaking the same thing.
That's the risk. And what as well, it's just, does Daniel understand why it went wrong? I guess that's the main thing, right? He needs to know why it went wrong so that it doesn't happen again. That he doesn't go to a team that give him a car he won't be able to drive, because that doesn't work for anyone. Like, he doesn't want to go to another team where he's having the same issues and getting destroyed by his teammate. Like that's
But
not good
also,
for the
just
team,
on
and that's
that
not
really
good for him.
quickly, in the position he's in now, he is not in any position to go to any team and say, right, make me this car. I want this. I want A, B, C. Like, they're going to have another driver who's already having a better time of it recently than Daniel Ricciardo. So I think, do you know what it is? Especially last year, I totally get it. He was incompatible with that car, and the McLaren was a little bit strange. I think this year, I think it's less the car, and I think it's him just mentally. He's completely shot, and he needs to prove to himself next year in his season off that the hunger is still there, and we're only going to see that with how hard he tries to get back onto the grid in 2024. So yeah, we'll see.
What do you think, Tomo, though, in terms of Ricciardo 2024? What do you think he'll be doing?
That's tough, isn't it? I think that, what do I think? Look, if the regulations do their job, then by 2024 we should have more cars that, like, the field spread shouldn't be like at the moment it's about 2 seconds in Q1. The whole from and that's kind of including Latifi, but it is not always.
I was about to say 2.5 if you include Latifi.
Even when he's within a couple of tenths. If that field spread's closed up, then yeah, maybe it's a Sauber looking ahead for an Audi, rebrand. I feel that's probably more likely, in my opinion, for something like that, a project to be excited about. I don't know. I can't see. It depends what he wants, right? Does he want to fight for a title? Does he just want more race wins? It just depends, because again, Lando, he had an opportunity potentially to go to Red Bull. If he wanted to just get race wins now, then sure, go into Red Bull now. But also, when Max Verstappen's your teammate at Red Bull, that's always going to be an uphill battle that no one's been able to overcome so far.
When does Lando's contract run out at McLaren? Because it was like a 6-year. Was it a 6-year one? Or
yeah, he got a big extension. I think it's ended 25. I think.
Oh wow! So even when it came to 24, then he might.
And I think Leclerc's ended 26. But
Max is like 27 or something.
Yeah. Well, actually, funny you mention that, because my talking point, my second and final talking point, is around Lando Norris, because I want to ask you boys, right? What's Lando done wrong this year? Because it's one of them, right?
Crashed Leclerc off in Sao Paulo. Criminal.
Apart from that, but genuinely, like, right, Lando's had a very, very strong season in a car that, clearly, I think it's been 5th best car overall this year. You look at the points he's scored relative to the Alpines. I know Alonso's been very unlucky. Would have been a lot closer to Lando if it wasn't for all his technical gremlins, but I think there's an argument for Lando being, like, Lando should, I feel like, now be in the conversation with at least Russell Leclerc. Like, I know he hasn't been able to prove it, but what more can he be doing right now? Because I think he's been stellar.
In the current cars that he's been given, there is absolutely nothing more that he can do. He scored podiums. He almost, got a win. Whatever people want to say about Sochi, all right, it was one race. He bottled it. If that's what
the team bottled that one,
yeah, that was the team.
But driver and team, yeah. If that's what you think, then that's what you think. But with the cars that he's been given, to me, he's exactly where Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez were in kind of like 2019, 2020. There was nothing more that Sainz and Perez could have done in those midfield cars. Perez was a race winner. He was consistent year after year. And then when both him and Carlos were given championship level cars or even race winning cars in 2021, and especially Carlos in 2022, Carlos was not on the level of Leclerc. When the car jumped up and when the pressure jumped up another level, Carlos was not able to kind of deliver on that level the same way that he was in the midfield. And that's the test that we still haven't seen from Lando Norris. So where he is right now, the season that he put together in 2022 is insane. Like, to me, he's one of the top 3 drivers. Oh, sorry. He's had one of the top 3 seasons in 2022. Like, he's right up there, I think, in terms of consistency. But yeah, we're just waiting for to see him in that next level car, a race winning car that will ask him a very different question. And I also want to see him up against a more difficult teammate as well, because he did get beat 2 years in a row by Carlos Sainz. Like, what happens if you put Perez in that McLaren? What happens if you put Alonso in that McLaren? Will there still be a gap? So now we're just waiting for him to be given the right car, but he's hit the ceiling of what he can improve in those cars.
But will McLaren give him that car? Yeah. That's the question. Do we think McLaren are going to give Lando that car, or is Lando going to leave before that happens? I guess.
From what they've done in the last season, there's still the potential there. They definitely grew a lot over this season. I think Alpine also stepped it up maybe towards the end, because it looked like McLaren backmarker team in the first race of the season, was right down there, really struggling. You laughing at my phrase of backmarker again, all right? Bahrain, it was, okay?
It was,
and it was so
they
weird.
sorted their brake issues in Bahrain.
That's
yes,
why
they
I
were
said
melting,
Bahrain,
but they sorted them out and they
okay?
were fine.
But they still weren't that great, and they was just sort of building blocks over the season, trying to get better and better and better, and they've been in this fight for fourth, and they missed out because Ricciardo, unfortunately, just wasn't able to step up to Lando's position. Otherwise, I think they would have gained on it, truly down to the reliability of that terrible Alpine car.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lando Norris, he's just been best the rest of this season, very strong. I do hope that McLaren can give them a car. Obviously, we've got Red Bull, who are going to be restricted next year further than everybody else, and then all the other teams, as they go down, they get restricted as well. So hopefully that helps teams get closer to the front, whether it's, you know, fighting for the championship or more just like being where Mercedes are compared to Red Bull and Ferrari now. That'd be a great step for everybody watching Formula One to see all these different drivers. But for Lando Norris, only driver out of the top three teams who's got a podium this season. So strongest driver, one of the strongest drivers on the grid for sure, one of the best. If Max Verstappen hadn't had the season that he's had, I'd probably suggest maybe actually even drive the season. And I think he needs also Oscar Piastri to come in there and maybe a bit more of a challenge up front, because
he's going to have so much pressure on his shoulders though, isn't he, Oscar?
But, you know, Lando's going to need this because he's doing all these other things. He's just chilling out, playing golf, he's DJing. I don't think he's fully committed to Formula One right now, and he's still smashing it. So when he gets given a car that is capable for fighting for a championship, puts in that extra effort, then I reckon he can be a driver who can be up there.
Because the thing is, it's easy to assume at the minute that, you know, the top three teams are going to stay the top three teams. But ultimately, if anyone is going to make that top three a top four or a top five, it's going to be seemingly either McLaren, Alpine or Aston Martin. They seem to be the teams with the most momentum, right? I mean, of course you think that. Maybe that'll be... It'll be Stroll, Norris... Stroll, Norris...
Stroll 2023, Stroll 2024, Stroll 2025...
Just replace that with Alonso.
But like Matt, do you think that McLaren are going to give him the car, or do you think he'll jump ship before that?
I don't think they will, unfortunately. It's a hard
But if they don't,
one.
where does he go as well? That's the thing.
I think it is because, like, obviously Lando is their poster child. They're the ones who they are like invested in, and they're very much, I think, built or trying to build that car around him. But we always know, though, for some odd reason, a car was never always sort of easy to drive. Because even I think there was that one mention of, for like, Carlos Sainz basically saying, you know, like, oh, when he was talking to Daniel, basically saying that, like,
he was like, it's different. Yeah, he was joking like, it's different, huh? Or something like that.
Exactly that. But I just don't think McLaren. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's not clicking with it yet, because it's not really the engine, but they know it's something to do with the weight. I just don't.
It's difficult to look into the crystal ball at the moment, because the team 2024 is actually their year in terms of, like, that's when they're building up like a brand new a wind tunnel and, like, simulator loop, and, like, it's going to be ready in at the beginning of 2023 or, like, midway through 2023.
Yeah.
And so that means the first car that will be built by this brand new McLaren that they've been working for since about 2017, 2018, when, like, Zach Brown came in, and then they got Andreas Seidel, and then obviously Lando kind of kicked off. They're building for 2024. That's going to be, I think, the first litmus test in terms of, like, if they still can't get Lando a race-winning car, and I'm not talking like fluke wins like when Gasly won or like when Ocon won, I'm talking a Ferrari of 2020. If they can't give Lando a Ferrari 2020 in 2024, then I think he cuts, and I think he's out.
What, back mark of Ferrari 2020?
Sorry, 2022. He's in my head. Hayden's actually in my head now, that stupid back marker.
Always am, mate. Always am. Never escaping.
That's the thing as well. Like, I think that, again, if the regulations do their job, the number of cars that can fight for a win should, in theory, increase. It shouldn't just, because it's always stayed at around 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a long time since we've had more than 3 different cars like capable of winning races on merit. What, 2012 maybe?
It's just annoying that it's still like 2 to 3 years in the future, and not like something like next season. You know, it's annoying when we can see all these developments happening, and it's so close, but we just know we've got to go for another 2 more years until we kind of get there. So
quick question for you guys. We currently got 3 teams that are kind of the race-winning teams at the front. Is domination a good thing in sport, or would having a chance for, say 7 or 8 teams who are always fighting at the front possible to win races better? Because I feel like, I don't know how I would feel personally. I think that's where kind of Formula E is. And that's, I feel like, why I haven't necessarily got into Formula E, because anything can happen. You can't really follow a storyline. That's my way I kind of see it. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think. I feel like there should always be like 3 teams, maybe 4 teams at the front that kind of chop and change. So like at the moment we got Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes. One of them drops out. Say Ferrari drops out, and then Alpine go in there or something like that.
Yeah, I think with the analogy with the example with Formula E, I'm not going to go to a huge defense of them, because I do agree, because I think that it's
Matt started a Formula E. Here we go.
No. Because
that new logo, by the way.
Because although it's not a spec series, but it's pretty much in that sense, it means a lot of the time the racing isn't reliant on the team, as it were, because although they have to do, they basically create the powertrain, that's it, because they can't control the bodywork, the braking or anything. They just got throttle maps they can kind of do. There is, I think, towards the end of the season with Formula E, you do tend to see who are kind of like the top teams who got it right, and like the bottom teams who don't. For example, Neo 333, the Chinese team, they're considered to be very much at the bottom. Although if you look at it on paper, they've got the exact same. They're their own car manufacturer. They can do a powertrain, and they've got really decent drivers. But the teams just aren't really there. I do think though with this, I think if it was to be like Formula E, where not spec series, but let's say like everyone had like the same power output as like the same engine as like let's say like a Ferrari or whatnot. I do think it then makes it harder to follow the story, because then you got your predetermined expectations of like, right, well, you should be performing better considering the team you're in, but this person is doing absolute bits considering how badly the team are, you know? So that's where we saw like George Russell, where he gets like, or even, Kevin Magnussen, where he gets pole at Brazil for the sprint race. We're so happy for him because we know how much of a shitbox the car is and how much he's had to go through to get to that position. Whereas if he was already in Ferrari and gets pole, we're like, all right, cool. Nice, but we understand it because of the anticipation. So I do think, you can't have full dominance. Like I think any more than like 5 teams, then it's different, because then otherwise it's hard to compare between two, between all.
You want a championship. I understand what Hayden's getting at though, but you want a championship narrative. Because sometimes when it's a bit too random, it's a little bit too difficult to follow. And ultimately, Formula One is the ultimate engineering challenge, and ultimately, I think that's why even though the kind of engineering side I think has always been forgotten about a little bit, because obviously it's been much more of an entertainment kind of business, but Formula One is still the ultimate kind of science experiment. It's the team that kind of engineers the best car. Who would have thought that Mercedes were going to be where they were, and produce the car that they did? I mean, they kind of obviously recovered, but I think it's. I don't think Formula One's going to get to a point where there's going to be like 5 or 6 teams challenging genuinely for wins. Like maybe there'll be a crazy season like 2012, but ultimately the best teams are always going to be the best teams. And when they find that solution, everyone else copies and everyone else will catch up. But I do think it's going to get a little bit closer, because this season actually was kind of domination. Think about last year in terms of like we had Ocon winning, we had Daniel Ricciardo winning, we had Alonso on the podium, we had Lando on the podium. It's only been Lando that's been kind of outside of the top 3 teams. So it's going to be an interesting one, I think.
I think giant killings are kind of part of sport. It's like when you there's an FA Cup game and you've got some little team in loads of leagues down beats a Premier League team. Like that's kind of what happened with Haas and K-Mag. But I agree with Adam. I don't think it will get to that extreme where like every single, because you look at the facility of Ferrari and Maranello versus the facility of Haas. And they're very, very different. Like, yes, they've got the same budget cap, but like that, there's a reason that the prize money is something that these teams value more than that 5% loss of aero time. Like, even though everyone's got the same cost cap, there's still value to having that increased, because there's a lot of external factors as well that indicate that certain teams will do better than others moving forward. But I think I'm always up for a giant killing. Definitely.
Here's one weird question for you, bit of off topic, because it just came into my mind then of talking to us about like how the different teams are, and it made me just think of the wind tunnel that we saw next to Racing Chocks, which is basically Aston Martin's one in like this metal shed. Honest to God, that's currently where it is at the moment. It's just in like this random little metal shed with a little plaque on it. So a completely unrelated question. Obviously, there's so many regulations about like how much wind tunnel testing you can do, yada yada. My thought on it is like, how is that regulated? Because like
I've always thought that as well.
Because like, are they like? Is that does like the FIA have a monitor on how much energy they're using? Because like in theory, you could just build like a secret wind tunnel test next to let's say a chocolate factory, and do loads there every single day, and then you just get all this extra data. Like I honestly don't know how that is.
Lawrence Stroll in the chocolate factory.
If I was to guess,
What
I'm
a
guessing
story.
each of the teams have like a nominated where their wind tunnel is, like a nominated wind tunnel, and then the FIA perhaps has data from all of the runs of those wind tunnels. And if you're found using a second wind tunnel that you haven't maybe nominated, then potentially you can be in some trouble. But that's something I've always thought. How do you know? Like, well, exactly.
I don't think you can get. I think in anything you'll never get away with it. Like you will never get away with anything.
It's not worth the risk
if you're cheating.
Yeah.
So if they did something like that, where they go to a second, you go to a second wind tunnel. I think people are going to quite quickly clock on and be like, okay, how is this team making that
everyone's a
big
small world.
stride ahead? Everyone knows how. Like these engineers.
Maybe
know
that's what
data.
happened to
Like,
Ferrari
if
with
they
the
see-
engine in 2019,
And then they
second
became a
tunnel
backmarker.
with their engine. how aero deficient can we make this engine in
But
a
no,
wind tunnel?
the thing is, when Aston Martin were getting looked at for the side pods that were like, the copy and Red Bull, and then it turns out actually they've been working on them for like months. They'd had them in the works. Like it was all the CAD files that I think the FIA like traced the breadcrumbs of that development. So I think that is probably what would indicate, okay, if every single component has that breadcrumb, then surely it's like when you do your taxes, like if HMRC check, then you best make sure you've got all your receipts. If they don't, then you're fine. But I always do, of course, Mr. HMRC. Okay, I promise.
I'm going to go no comment on that.
What was that thing that you mentioned? You said something about a beach or something offshore to me earlier. What was all that?
No, that was Zach. That wasn't me.
Okay, cool. No worries, man. Cool.
Shh. Anyway, right. Should we get to head
Something
heads,
about
boys?
Switzerland banking.
We're going for an hour
He was watching the FIFA documentary
hour
about corruption, mate. It was something
and 7 minutes. Come, we've got to do head to heads, boys. We'll be here all night otherwise.
I feel like we can just go through these quite quickly. I think we're all going to be in the same agreement, aren't we?
Latifi and Albon is what are we saying?
Albon,
but Latifi 10 out of 10 for that pirouette spin with his fellow leaving.
Alex Albon wins. All right, Alfa Romeo. As Joe Bottas.
Joe for me.
Joe, what a legend.
Yep, and he did enough to hold
Rookie
up
of
the Astons.
the season as well. Rookie of the season.
Yeah.
Let's
Thoroughly
go.
Literally, Joe's antics holding up the Astons basically got Alfa Romeo loads more money. He literally
12 million.
Yeah, is it 12? It's 12.
That's
really,
what
not
it
that
said.
much.
12 million.
What? Really? That's the difference.
Yeah.
that's what Sky was saying. 11 to 12 million is the difference between each of the.
If he does not get a bonus, oh my god! Like, come on.
Plus, that man brings the bag to that team as well. So,
Yeah.
Joe Guan Yu.
That's worth in gold. That's worth.
He should have done a rookie presentation to himself of like why I should be rookie of the year.
Fair play, Joey. Right, Haas. Mick
Schumacher. He had the crash, but he was still ahead of his teammate in both the race and in qualifying. Magnussen out in Q1. Mick Schumacher got to Q2. And I think was quite high in Q2. So, like I've been saying, for the second half of the season, Mick Schumacher's been the better driver.
Yeah, I'm going with Mick on this one.
I'll go with Mick as well, yeah. I don't know why K-Mac had a bad race. I'm not quite sure why, so I'm going to go K-Mac.
He did a one-stopper as well on K-Mac. I put him on the one-stopper, which for the back markers, it was a stupid idea.
No. Not good. All right, AlphaTauri. Sonoda, surely. Sonoda P11, Gasly P14.
Don't know what's going on with Gasly in the last few races.
In this race.
He did a one-stop, Gasly, which didn't work. Started on the softs as well, and still
that
did
was
a
really
one-stop.
weird, yeah. Only person to as well.
Not good strat.
Sonoda.
Yuki, man like Yuki. All right, Alpine. Alonso
Ocon.
Yeah, Ocon out-qualified, was ahead. Alonso couldn't get past Vettel. And then obviously, shame for Alonso, but yeah, Ocon getting the points home.
Nah, I'm going to go Alonso. I love the finger. The finger got brought back.
Oh yeah,
love it.
One of them,
You do love a good finger.
I do love a good finger.
Yeah, I think Alonso's race was shaping up to be stronger than Ocon's, but yeah, he was never ahead of Esteban.
Yeah.
And
Did you say he fell off?
gremlins.
What did you say, Matt?
Well, just fell off the pace a bit. So.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
Aldous got really offended then.
Sorry, you were the one earlier when you were like, "Oh yeah, the two rubbish drivers at Aston Martin, which was going to be Alonso," and you have to go at me and be like, "Oh, he fell off."
Right, Aston Martin, McCutcheon, Vettel, Stroll, P8, P10, Hayden.
Oh,
Lance Stroll finished ahead, but Vettel did have a bad strategy, so I'm obviously going to go for Vettel. Q3 as well, great performance. Lance going to get to Q2. I want to say one thing though, right?
Go on then.
The Overtake Award that they brought in last season,
that's not one thing.
They changed it. They changed it this year, so it's an Overtake King, and you vote for it per overtake of each track. Whereas I'm pretty sure Lance Stroll would have taken that because he always starts so far back in qualifying, gets just outside the point. Where's my man's
Your man was robbed.
Overtake Award of the season?
Hashtag robbed.
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 2 years in a row I've been robbed in Abu Dhabi.
it just wants some silverware, man.
I'm going to go
Brilliant.
Vettel as well. Yeah, he got done by the one stop, but he had the pay. He was actually hurrying Ocon as well. He was like properly hurrying him. So
Oh yeah, I reckon he was quicker than Ocon. He'd have finished ahead of Esteban, I think. Yeah, Vettel, I agree. McLaren,
Lando, easy.
Lando.
Mercedes, George P5, Hamilton DNF. What are we thinking?
Still
I'm
George.
gonna go
I
Russell.
think George out-qualified Hamilton, didn't he?
nope.
Nope.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, okay.
Washed.
The highlight merchant
Washed.
gets caught
I'm
again.
gonna go with Hamilton. Then. I'm gonna go with Hamilton. Sorry, I'm getting old. Once you hit 26, you can't remember the day before.
God, you're 26. Oh my god.
Don't ask these two their age. God.
Literally, I'm in a podcast with a pensioners. It's unreal.
Aldous doesn't even have pubes yet, so.
You sound jealous, mate.
Lewis.
I think I'm going to go Lewis on this one. I mean, obviously at the very end of the race, it was a shifting issue rather than a floor damage. So I feel like there must have been something terminal with the car anyway, which wasn't really his fault. Out qualified.
First mechanical failure all season.
Yeah.
For the Mercedes.
When the car goes boom, I mean that's probably gonna.
Maybe.
Sorry,
yeah.
can you just demonstrate that again? Because I want to see from an engineer's point of view. That's brilliant. I'll take that towards
But yeah, I'm gonna go with Hamilton on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say Lewis. Yeah, I think given that he had this damage and he was still able to be faster than George after dialing a bit of less front winging, that's really impressive. Like I feel like Lewis was the quicker driver.
the British bias on this podcast is unreal.
I'm gonna give it to Russell on this one.
Whoa! What
Russell
a shock.
The
Russell fan.
Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. I mean, Leclerc, surely.
Yeah,
Leclerc.
easy one.
They left him out there, and then it actually paid off in their favour. So
Yeah, well done, Ferrari. A small dub for once. And then Red Bull, Verstappen, Perez.
Max.
yeah.
Max Verstappen. Shame for Perez that he got screwed over by the strategy. Also, did anyone see at turn one where Max kind of like cut across, like got it very close between him and Perez? If those two had come together, we would have had a spicy 2023.
Yeah, all Mexico fans would have been like, yes, redemption. But yeah, no, I've got to go with Verstappen on this one.
Easy. All right, boys, we're done. We're done for 2022, lads. How are we feeling? We feeling tired? I'm quite tired actually.
I'm tired.
Very tired. And now this is the one. Now we're all going to start making off-season content.
Yes. Well, for the podcast, we are not planning on bringing any podcasts in the off season. We'll see for next year. But you'll know where to find all of us, Aldous. Where can everyone find you?
It's all on my channel. I've got all the good stuff, all the off-season content that you want to watch.
One time to plug where people can find you. You just go my channel.
Mate, they know it already. They
link
know.
in the
Trust me,
description.
mate.
On my.
They know. You know what my channel is called. So don't worry about that.
It's Galdas 27. Hayden, you're going to be playing with Thibaut Courtois over the World Cup.
I'm going to be playing with Thibaut Courtois on Thursdays. I've got a league race. I'm sure Joe's going to make some appearances playing F1, or you can catch me on Sky Sports F1 on the 14th, 15th and 16th of December for the F1 esports on the desk. So I'm out.
Where's the nearest plug? And Matt, where are you going to like make a video about how F1 cars I don't know,
how to crack a floor on an F1 car.
How to turn an F1 car into a rowing boat. That's a good one.
I'll let you make that one, mate. On my current production board at the moment, I've got how F1 tracks are designed. So that's with Carsten Tilke, who designed Las Vegas, and we've got some exclusive track designs of how they actually made it and the restrictions.
Did you ask him why he made such a bad track, by the way?
What with Vegas?
Yep.
Well, I'll show you the restrictions they had, and then you can do judgment for yourself. And you can see the options that F1 wanted to go down the route and very much got denied, which would have been a lot worse because they wanted to originally go into because they brought a massive patch of land, Formula One in Vegas, and they actually wanted to do a second version of going around a car park kind of thing. And they were like, nope, we've got to include the strip, we've got to include the hotels next to Caesar's Palace. So, so they got all that to look forward to. But tell me, what's coming up on your channel soon, mate?
End of season
predictions,
reacting to my
reviewing
predictions.
2022 predictions, 2024
bottom of the barrel content. Absolutely,
I
laugh at myself.
Suits for 2022, best helmets for 2022.
I want to see a comeback as well. Of what if this brand came into Formula One?
Yeah,
I think you should do some really rogue ones of Nike or Caesar's Palace, or I don't know,
Caesar's Palace,
to just get a random sponsorship deal.
Durex,
there we go.
They've already been in Formula One.
Exactly. Bring them back.
Now they're coming back for 2023. What would that look like on a 2023
They're back
car?
and they're coming in hard.
Do your tyres wear out? Add extra rubber with
Duracell. I've been watching too much Williams, mate. Actually, no. My video this week is all about. I'm going into more detail about all the qualifying gaps and the average, looking at the first half of the season, the second half of the season, and how everyone.
Why Albon is the GOAT, proved by data.
Exactly, data. But yes, let's wrap it, boys. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for spending all this hour and 17 minutes of waffle with us.
Also,
a pleasure as always.
Appreciation as well for everyone.
Here we go.
No, just because this season, obviously, the Talking Points podcast has moved from destination to destination. We do realise it's been a bit of a hectic one. But yeah, thanks to everyone who has actually sort of stuck around and listened to us guys just waffle on. And like Thomas said, we're not going to be doing anything in the off season, but we're going to sort of maybe restructure a show in the new season when the F1 does come back.
We'll see next season. A lot can change in 3 months now that Hayden's a big F1 esports star.
Big old presenter.
Yeah, big old presenter. Right, all right, everyone. Goodbye. Ciao.
Bye.
Wave.
Bye.
Waves to the camera. Bye. Have a great time.